Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tech SEO podcast. My name is Dan Taylor, and today I am joined by Gerry White. Gerry is currently the VP of Growth at Mirador Local. Mirador Local is a solution for managing multiple Google business profiles, accepting, rejecting changes, amending opening hours, pushing posts, bulk changes, etc., all at scale from a single usable dashboard. Mirador has also just recently introduced the Mirror Score feature, so you can get a quantitative health check of how your listings are doing and what their health is at scale and across the board.
Yeah.
Gerry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you for the introduction.
No
And by
worries,
the way, Mirror Score is free.
Oh yes, I was going to say, did I miss anything else out on Mirror Score though? But yeah, Mirror Score is also free, so you can check that out at miradorlocal.com. So Gerry, today we're here to talk about. I know it's a topic that both you and I have, I'm going to say, expressed views on historically. Most of our views have been slightly shouty, frustrated, and often with a pint. But Google Search Console, I kind of guess rather than me labouring the point a little bit more, I'll hand the floor over to you. Why do you want to talk about Google Search Console?
Well, a lot of the time we speak is because I don't understand something or something's ambiguous or confusing or just plain wrong. But that's because we both spend a lot of time in Google Search Console. And one of the things I think we find is that when we speak to clients, when we speak to a lot of other people, it's almost like they don't understand just how much information's in there. Good example is we kind of looked around at one of them and found that, the images that are kind of working have suddenly dropped down, that we've looked at other clients where we've seen some really interesting things within the settings, within the crawl budgets. There is a lot of information weirdly hidden away in Google Search Console information, or as I like to call it, Webmaster Tools, because I'm actually that old. A lot of us still call it Webmaster Tools, which is really worrying, but basically Google Search Console has got crazy amounts of information. And this weird part about it is the fact that so much of it is just kind of weirdly hidden away and not identified by people. So I think it's a great topic because I think it's massively underappreciated. And as Dan, you've already said, a lot of the information is a bit confusing, a bit strange, and takes a little bit of understanding to kind of properly interpret, but it's still such a great starting point whenever you're looking at a fresh site or your own sites that you've been looking after for a couple of years. Make sure you go and poke around within there.
So when you, just to dig into this a little bit deeper, just so folks, and when you say there's a lot of information in there, and I know in kind of a pre kind of recording conversation we spoke about some of it being confusing. What are some of the information points which you think people are misinterpreting, or also again harking back to the pre-recording conversation we had? You mentioned around that when people typically start an audit, they immediately go for the crawling tools versus opening up Search Console or something like that. Do you want to just dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I love Screaming Frog. Without a doubt, it's almost one of my first tools. Sitebulb is second tool. Actually, I'm not ranking either of them. I use both of them comprehensively, differently. But what I'm getting at is, before I even open those up, I'll take a look at things like the coverage report to see if they've got software reports. I'll have a look to see in every part of the site to kind of look at what Google's saying is a big issue for them. Are the XML sitemaps comprehensive? Are the XML sitemaps have lots of errors in them? I start to look at what I should be focusing the crawls on, because the great thing about crawling tools is you can configure them extensively to make sure they really do kind of look at what you really want to look at. And sometimes if you kind of go, okay, so Google's flagging all these pages as a software for, why don't I check for all the pages in the crawl that has this particular text, which maybe says no articles found or something similar. So I can look into the software for issue, configure the tools, and then it's much more comprehensive. And that's just in the coverage report. The coverage report has so much more in it. There are elements of it which are ambiguous, like what does crawl but not index mean? And why is this page sat there for so long? And why are all these pages canonicalized when they shouldn't be canonicalized? What's going on? Basically, I can start to really comprehensively find lots of kind of weird bits of information that then make me kind of go, okay, what I'm going to focus on for this crawl is why there's lots and lots of links going to pages not indexed, or why there's lots of pages going to these. Basically, you can take a look at the site architecture in a much more interesting way and produce a much more comprehensive audit much quicker.
It's interesting though what you say about the coverage report, and I know from running a Slack group with about 8,500 people on it, and also lurking around Reddit for the past sort of decade. A lot of people's complaints is that you can't export all the data points essentially in Search Console. I mean, you can via the API, and obviously you've got thresholds and cardinality and whatnot. For those people not able to use the APIs or don't have the resources, so potentially people in house who have limited budget or necessarily just don't have the technical know-how to use the APIs, with the limited data that you can then get from these coverage reports and environments, how would you advise they go around using these at scale? Because more often than not, the websites will have more than 1,000 URLs, 1,000 keywords, 1,000 rows of data. So, yeah, how do you go about scaling that?
I think it's very much that you're looking for templates. You're looking for what template is causing the issue. I mean, my previous role at Just Eat, we famously laughed internally about the fact that the site really only had 6 pages. There was only kind of 6 comprehensive templates that Google was seeing kind of throughout the site, and one fix on one of those pages would kind of ripple through tens of thousands of pages or tens of thousands of URLs. Sorry. So it's kind of really important that we got the templates right. And this is what the sample gives you. Google isn't giving you every single page with an issue. It's giving you a sample of the pages to find out what kind of needs to be scaled up or what is kind of an issue. Good example there is when I've worked on a lot of e-commerce websites, and they often have hundreds of category pages which have just got no products in or manufacturers that have gone. And that obviously is considered by Google to be a software for. And as soon as you see these problems, you kind of go, okay, this is a problem. How big is the scale? What can I do to fix it up? Are they in the sitemap? Should I remove them from the sitemap? How do I find all these? And normally by talking with a developer, you kind of go, this is a sample of the problem. Can we have a look at the scale of it? And that is often easier to work with a good developer than necessarily a comprehensive. These are the 22,000 pages which have got this issue. Can we fix each one of them individually? So it's looking at a sample of a template rather than a comprehensive audit. The other thing that I would mention is you and I both kind of look at different search consoles from one site. You can have a search console which is a domain level, so it's like everything at, say, TechSEO dot whatever, or you can have a look at it at a subdomain level. So there's lots of different ways in which you can find different ways in which these are comprehensively giving you different data points. And every single time that I set up a console account for different clients, I kind of often suggest that they set up multiple ones, one for the top level domain, one for a subset of pages, particularly if this subset of pages is particularly significant.
I kind of guess on that notion then, and understanding the different ports, understanding the frustrations, and both you and I in various guises have come across different like levels of Search Console as well. Everything from Piddly to Goliath enterprise levels. I think the largest Search Console I've come across was it was broken up into 104 separate Search Consoles because of the level of internationalization and productization that was on it. Given your experience of, obviously, I mean, I remember Webmaster Tools as well. I can remember the old clunky UI. I kind of miss it sometimes. It was a much simpler world back then as well. I think I just want 2015 to come back. How would you improve Search Console, not just from an enterprise kind of SEO perspective, but kind of more from that perspective of how people sometimes rely on it because they don't have a budget for third-party tools? Because Search Console really needs to work for everybody, from those with all the budget in the world, for every tool with all the bells and whistles, through to a shoestring in house, I guess.
It almost needs a ChatGPT style interface. It needs better help documentation. It needs to link to the help documentation, and the help documentation needs to actually explain what it means. It feels a lot of the time that when I kind of click through to a explanation of a particular issue, I read it and I kind of frown and kind of go, that doesn't really answer A, what the problem is, and B, what the solution is. And also, it doesn't kind of prioritize things very much. Bing actually does a better job of this. Bing has got some quite interesting parts to it. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is if you use Bing in association with Google Search Console, you actually automatically what am I looking for? You authorize Bing automatically when you authorize Google Search Console, because the two can be connected up. And this is very, very useful to just basically make sure you've got a second view. And I think Bing is massively underestimated, and it's a growing search engine. At the moment, I think we kind of assume it's got about 2%, but because Bing feeds into so many other search engines and tools and devices and areas, it's a lot more underestimated than people give it credit for. And I think one of the things that we need to understand is that Bing also powers many other search engines, which don't reveal just how much traffic they're sending you.
No, absolutely. I think just important to touch on there that when you say it's powering other things, a lot of AI tools, when they connect to the internet, use Bing search index data or use Bing APIs directly. So
Yeah,
it's almost like we're focusing on Google, but the AI revolution is coming in Microsoft branding inadvertently. It's interesting you also mentioned the Chat GPT kind of overview things. So Microsoft Clarity obviously has that at the moment for data summarization and things like that.
I've not
Would
seen
you
that.
go? Ah, okay. So so Microsoft Clarity, which is a halfway house between a webmaster tools and a Google Analytics of old.
I think
Um,
it's Hotjar's probably the closest example people might know.
yeah, it's weird because I mean I use it for traffic, but I also use it for the heat maps and everything else out of the box it comes with. But yeah, it's kind of like I want to be Hotjar, but I also want to give you the traffic and user acquisition data.
I
I think it's found its niche.
I love
Um,
Clarity. It's also super fast compared with many other tools as well. And because it's free, I do install it on nearly every website, but I haven't seen the AI overview yet. So I think I need to kind of dive back in again. Shows how often I kind of dive into some of the tools that we install and use.
yeah, about a couple of months ago, I noticed it more prominently. But you can go on, say, uh, user cohort journeys in Clarity, or go onto the heat maps, and you can go right. Look at the last 10 and give me a summary of what's happened, and it will write a bullet list summary of what's happening, pain points. And the other thing with Clarity, which is useful as well, it tracks things like rage clicks and
Yeah.
dead clicks. That's people who are smashing a button or just clicking around the site, potentially expecting certain elements to load. But the AI pulls through what those elements are as well. So you can actually identify if it is an issue or, I don't know, just somebody sat there idly clicking around. I
Mm.
must admit, sometimes if I'm on a site and I see that they've got Clarity installed, I will idly just start clicking around just because I'm interested to see if they're using the AI feature and if it causes that confusion.
I do know somebody who would create pictures in it of rude things.
Yes, but we've told you to stop doing that, Gerry. Um, so on kind of going back to Search Console then, because I think Bing probably deserves its own, and even Clarity deserves its own kind of deep dive at a later date, as well as other kind of tools out there. Um, what are some of the biggest frustrations you see coming from clients with Search Console at the moment? Because again, harking back to the pre-recording conversation we had, it's kind of that we want more people to be using Search Console. We want more people to be actively looking at it and using the data because it's a gold mine of underutilized opportunity. But at the same time, because the document, I think for Google's own sake, they're not as explicit as they can be with documentation. Because if they turn around and said the grass is red, there'd be a subset of individuals who just take that as verbatim, and then it would launch 1,000 Reddit complaints, and the
Yeah.
bandwidth just isn't there to support that.
One of the first things you see when you load up Google Search Console is this big number which says click-through rate and average rank. And these two numbers are completely meaningless in many ways. And I say this because they are misinterpreted. Click-through rate is great when you're looking at a keyword at a country level, or when you're looking at it at a URL level, but it's completely meaningless when you're looking at it anything other than those two reasons. And the reason I say that is that basically, if you're looking at a set of keywords, when we do SEO, often what we want to do is rank for more keywords. We look at kind of the average rank of, we look at the rankings of kind of specific keywords we're targeting, but we also rewrite content, we improve websites to rank for more phrases. And if we start to rank for more phrases, often these will be at a slightly lower level, but we'll get huge impressions, we'll get huge amounts of kind of traffic as a result of it. So fundamentally, traffic is the most important part. Clicks of the right keywords, which brings to revenue is more important than average rank, because average rank for all your keywords is just confusing, to say the least. And as I say, the more content, the more blog posts, the more articles, the more we basically add to a website, which improves the number of impressions we get. Often that will have a negative impact on both the click-through rate and the average rank. Good example is when I worked at Oda, we had a really high click-through rate. We had really good rankings because we only had a one-page site. As soon as we opened the site up to search engines, our click-through rate fell through the floor. The average rank fell through the floor, but the traffic, impressions, clicks went straight through the ceiling. So nobody really worried about those particular metrics, except for one guy who sat there and went, "This is worrying." And I had to kind of really explain how the numbers and statistics worked.
Yeah, average rank has been one of the bugbears of the past few months, especially for me. What I don't think everyone understands is average rank in Search Console uses central tendency to equate itself. So despite the fact you can have a page ranking in first or in the top 3, as Google rewards that page more, it will give you rankings in high positions, and central tendency is effectively that mean. So your average rank will decrease for being in theory, your average rank will decrease the more a page or keyword is rewarded across the site. And yeah, it's an inverse notion, but yeah, the amount of individuals who look at it and go, "Oh no, this is." I mean, obviously, if the average rank just disappears, yeah, I'm gonna be questioning like, "Oh, but the carpet looks a bit charred," and not realizing the rest of the house is on fire, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's useful in troubleshooting, but not as a performance metric.
It needs to be used. It needs to be used basically for keywords within particular pages, and you need to know what you're doing. Basically, it's a number, a mathematical number that is badly interpreted. And I blame Google for this. They put it right on the homepage, and weirdly enough, the templates for Looker Studio have average rank there. And you look at it, kind of going, but why have you put this on there? I kind of had a bit of a rant on stage about this once before I realized that there were two Googlers sat in front of me.
Well, I remember rant became a bit more fervorous, I guess. I mean, I had an example about a month ago where someone from PPC land was highlighting on a client average rank had decreased. At which point, I kind of highlighted you have 81 different URLs have ranked for that keyword across the site. One of them has been consistently in second, a handful page 2, page 3, and then Google's just been flipping it around because it's a small e-com element. And like, if you change that from 3 months to a month, it changes. If you change it by device, it changes. It's a just because the number's bigger than 1 doesn't mean it's an issue.
And yeah, the other area that I think people don't look at is the submitted pages and coverage reports there. This is really helpful. Have a look at your XML sitemaps, have a look at the coverage of those. And if Google's kind of got 100%, it's all green, fine. But if it's 20% because they're all canonicalized, that means there's an issue with your XML sitemaps. That means that Google is telling you very explicitly that the URLs in your sitemaps and your canonical tags probably don't match. Or alternatively, Google is, for some reason, ignoring your canonical tag. So there's so many kind of areas of the site which allow you to kind of question, dig into, and really get fast answers before you need to kind of dig into any other tools. Seriously, take a look in your submitted pages, have a look at the coverage of those, and then have a look at the unsubmitted pages. Should these pages be in an XML sitemap? Have you got a lot of pages which Google are not finding in XML sitemaps, which really clearly should be?
No, absolutely. Well, I kind of guess that draws us to a close for this episode of the Tech SEO podcast. I'd like to thank Gerry again for taking time out to record this with me. And also remember, if you want to check out MirrorScore and get a quantitative measure of how well your Google business profiles are performing for free, please head over to miradorlocal.com. So thank you also all for listening.
GBP benchmark.
Yeah, the GBP benchmark, it's the one metric for comparison and actually easily reportable back to the rest of the organization as to why it matters, and why your local Google business profiles matter. So thank you all for listening at home. I've been Dan Taylor and Gerry's been Gerry White. And if you like this episode, please do subscribe to the SALT YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on one of the podcast apps, please do follow. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. And that's been everything for this episode of the Tech SEO podcast.